Here we go. All right, everybody, stocks back, the numbers, welcome back. And I wanted to do a quick update just looking at a couple of stocks that we looked at kind of recently. And I just wanted to quickly go through just how we look at in the charts, in my opinion, and where we can potentially see them going in sort of the next maybe week, month or so. So first one up, of course, is Fubo. We just looked at Fubo. We just had the big news. As you see, stock ran up again today, ended up closing at 546, up 40 cents, 7.9%. Hit a new high of 645. Go back to my trend line I drew out for you guys. 644 around the level I said. But technically rejected off of that trend line, right? So a lot of people now were like, okay, now where's it going to go? Well, obviously one of two places, right? We can go up or we can go down. So if we're going to go up tomorrow now, we're basically at the same price, 645, maybe like 647 or something on the angle up. So if we do start to climb up back into the sixes, in my eyes, that's the level you have to watch to see if it wants to break up above it, because it did run right to it and then it paused. So we have to see if it wants to retest or if now we're going to continue to cool down and potentially come back down to this first trend line of about 470 and change, around 478 that we were watching yesterday. And we would be looking at, yeah, about the same price, like 478-ish, kind of, sort of, around that level, 475. So look for that comeback. And again, just to reiterate what these trend lines are, this is going back on the way down. This was the previous spike up, February 2nd, 2023. And this is one trend line coming across to the top of the wick of this next high on August 4th, 2023. And one going across to the, it's hard for you to see here. Oh no, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it was to the body and the wick. No, my apologies. So this is to the top of this candle on August 4th, 23, and then one trend line going to that top on December 14th, 2023. So just drew those two across, and you can see that this is why I like trend lines. Because again, is it absolutely exact? I know this one basically worked out almost to the penny. Yeah, sometimes you can get it exactly, but also, it just kind of gives you a general idea of a couple of these points to keep an eye on. So now you can kind of see, as I said, okay, we rejected off this, so now we can potentially pull back down to there. So if it does want to come back down, but then it has to bounce because they feel it's worth at least 5 and change, then, hypothetically, if you want to step in, if you weren't involved, you can maybe step in, try to grab some shares down here in the high fours. And even if you want to trade it, it runs back up, whatever, a quick, 10, 12%, boom, you're in, you're out. Again, I know not everyone wants to just buy something and hold for a year and a half, 3 years. So, however you want to play it. But in my opinion, those are a couple of levels to watch. And if we go back here, the previous high here, August 16th, 2022, top left of the screen, the O, the H, the L, the C, that's the open, the high, the low, the close. You can see the high, 814, right? So now we draw that trend line across. That's now our next resistance level, in my opinion. So if we do retest 644 and get back above it in a day or two and make even higher highs, then the next stop could potentially be around $8. And this here also, like the previous level, see how we looked at this last time, I think, and I was saying like it could potentially run up here to around like $8, or like the mid-range of this, like 7 1/3 or something, right? So that's why potentially $8 back to where there was a lot of action here back in early 22. That could be the next level of around $8. And then also you can see here, could be hard to see, let me zoom in. And you can see how we had a little gap down here, and then we retested basically back to that gap and then rejected and started dropping down. And that low on that day before the gap down, as you see, top left, 1124. So if we do continue to pump and the word continues to spread, and a lot of investors are looking at the situation like, listen, originally it was just Fubo. The cash was a little rough, right? Negative cash flow. Now they're under the Disney umbrella. We got the combination with Hulu, and now this is, just a completely different combined beast of an animal. So we can easily, maybe even something like a Snapchat, right? We can run this up just like a Snap would, 9, 11, 12, and just kind of bounce it around up and down based on these earnings, right? But in my opinion, I do still say there's a lot of value here, and I didn't mean to click on that. But if we come back down here, we can see our numbers adjusted. Shout out to someone who mentioned that in the comments, because the numbers didn't adjust during the day. And with us looking at FUBO at like 480, I was sitting here like, wow, yeah, we got a market cap $500 million. The numbers didn't adjust, so now the numbers are adjusted. We're looking at a 1.8 billion market cap. But again, remember this also. In my opinion, when I looked at the numbers and how they were growing, the revenue they were bringing in, right? We did our quote unquote fair value of the business. I think we were at like around $1 billion in change, right? And that's why we were saying, even if we get to like 1.5, 2x quote unquote fair value, we could be looking at like a $7, $8 stock potentially. So that's why I kept saying, even when I jumped on Twitter, I kept saying, like, in my opinion, like, conservatively, it's $5 stock, right? Conservatively. But again, remember, that was FUBO. That was not with Hulu. You understand? So now, that's why, again, even something up here, like this 1124, that could be conservative, honestly. That could be conservative. Again, something like an ASTS, and I'm not bashing you guys. You know that. I'm happy no matter how you make money, right? Whether I agree with the move or not. But I always bring up something like that just because it is a really good example. Because I understand it was in that niche space, and, everyone started buying up all these companies. I understand that. So it just continued to pump. But, that thing reached like 7 billion in change market cap. And they're technically not really... I know they were like running, but they're not really up and running. You know what I'm saying? And that's why something like a FUBO now, already established, mixed with the Hulu, 11 billion, $11 a share, excuse me. What are we talking? 3.5 billion market cap? That should be easily attainable, in my opinion. So that's why, again, see, off the initial pump, the problem is you have a lot of traders mixed with the investors, right? So as an investor, if it starts to pull back now over the next couple of days, it's not going to make sense to you, right? Because you're looking at the long picture. And you're saying, no, over the next year or two, this thing could be huge. They can, consistently keep growing. Numbers could come in. And, stock could climb up. Like we said, this line here, 11, it can get to 15, 18. I believe in it. Okay, fine. But remember, not everyone's an investor, right? Some people are traders. Some people like to be in and out. Some people don't want to lock up the money for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, right? So some people, again, even if they stepped in yesterday and then you wake up today, boom, you're up. You called the continued pump, it hit some resistance. It started to cool off. Okay, boom. So you're in, you're out. And that's why, again, even tomorrow and the next day, you could see some people start to just take the money and run. Oh, as long as I sell above 5, that'll be okay. And then, it'll slowly start to bounce up. But those are a couple of levels to keep in mind. And if we switch over here to stock charts, again, the RSI in this moment doesn't really matter. Because, again, as you see, the RSI continued to climb up even throughout today as the stock ran up, almost hit 6.5. So, should it pull back to like 3? I mean, in my opinion, it really shouldn't. It should be very difficult now to force this stock down, even with the run-up and the whatever, 1.7, 1.8 billion in change that the market cap's currently sitting in. I actually think, in my opinion, that is very close to fair value. And after this news, it would be difficult for you to sit here and say that it's overvalued. You understand? So in my opinion, the upside outweighs the downside. And what was this previous point here? Yeah, it's about 669, 670. Stock ran up again perfectly to our trend line, 645, and then paused for a second. But technically, it's showing this pivot point here looking like about 562. And technically, we close now below that. But again, we were talking about the potential retracement up to 7.5 of the moving average as well. So that's why, again, we looked at that other consolidated range between about 7 1/3 and that 814 mark I laid out. And now you have the moving average sitting right in the middle of that range at about 7.5. So that's why we could we can bounce and drop at the open back to that 470, 480 level, and then bounce and run up to 7 and change. It very well could happen. So that's why, again, even people asked me yesterday, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too much because it was mostly the news that came out that helped push this. But, you know, people were commenting yesterday like, oh, I saw you talking about it. I didn't get involved. I knew I should have. You know, what do you think? Is it going to keep going? And I said, in my opinion, there's probably still more value here, right? So, of course, initially the next day it popped up and I was right. But in the long term, again, if we believed in the growth of Fubo long term, now Fubo plus Hulu, probably looking even better. But yeah, again, on the weekly RSI up here at 85, but again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really. In my opinion, there's a pure fundamental play now, not really a technical play. Short float sitting here a little over 12.33%. I think that's updated every week. Again, someone mentioned this, but I'm sorry, I don't remember because I asked last time and someone commented, oh, they updated this, and I just completely blanked. But I think it's like every week. But yeah, it could very well get up to that $7.5, $8 level. Let's look at MBOT real quick because MBOT did a small offering, and we were speaking about that even the last time we looked at it. Again, back here, the last update was like December 16th, and then just within a week or so, we started to break up and really get trending. But yeah, raises a total of approximately 11.8 million in gross proceeds from direct offering. And again, we mentioned this last time because we looked at the cash, right? And I was saying, in my opinion, in the long term, it could be good. However, they were running low on cash. And as the stock started to run up, we even had a couple of people in the comments saying, I've been holding for a long time. Usually when it spikes up, they, issue an offering to, grab a couple of million for themselves, keep their heads above water. So obviously it makes sense. The stock was, I believe, maybe about 260. Where was the stock pre-market here? One sec. Because I remember we were looking at it. Yeah, stock ran up. Look at this. Stock was taken off, right? The word was out. People wanted more. Mind you, we looked at the stock multiple times down in the very low $1 range. And I said, again, in my opinion, I said, juice might be worth the squeeze. Maybe you want to grab some shares here at $1 and, just tuck it away. But again, I didn't see this breakout happening this quickly. But apparently, it got trending. And we saw the big run up here on Friday. And it looked like everyone just continued to pile in and just didn't want to miss the ride. And we got up to 405. And then you can see the big drop down here, whoosh, on the news of the offering, right? And we've been kind of hanging out now in, well, we immediately dropped to the low twos. So we could say like the low to high 2 range. And then you can see, look, we bounced slowly, continue to stay above the 20-day moving average really throughout most of the day. And then you can see the dip back down. What's the drop on that? 228, right? So again, back down to the low twos. And the reason why that happened is because the stock was up at low fours. And it was, 370, 360, kind of holding that level. And then someone commented in the Discord, it was at the market. They issued shares at the market. And I started flipping out because I was like, wow, that's phenomenal because they're offering new shares and they know, and now they feel the investors know that the shares are worth more, right? So when I saw at the market, I thought they issued shares at like $3 and change or something like that. But we can see that it was at a price of 175, which is immediately why the stock came down and even retested the low twos. So in my opinion, this run up right here to about this level here, about 175, in my opinion, that was a good value, especially after it started to gain some attention, right? So the move from 1 to 175 kind of made sense. Having it continue to run just kind of shows the power of social media. And when you show people that you missed out and this could potentially be huge, they'll pile in. It doesn't matter how much it went up, right? So it continued to go up. But again, the shares, the offering, that's why I say if I liked personally 175 at kind of new quote unquote fair value, then I'd say with them offering new shares at 175, even though it technically should go down and would be worth less because we would have more shares, right? So it would have to come down. But I still say, based on what is potentially on the horizon with this FDA approval, I would personally value shares at the low twos. Okay, which is why I kind of like this trend line here. going across, see, just like those last couple of candles towards the end of the day on that January 2nd, and then it spiked straight up. And you can see this was kind of the support trend line. And then obviously as it broke, it started to drop, and then, you know, we got news of the offering, but you understand. But this trend line here, if we draw this across here, if we extend this out, we can see, do you see? We can see, right? If we come down here, let's say hypothetically tomorrow, $2. So that's why if over the next day or two, you know, it kind of like slowly comes down and meets up, and now we're at, you know, yeah, like 230. I would say, I really would say, in my opinion, even if you got in late and it potentially breaks back down to about 1 3/4 and then bounces, I would say, in my opinion, maybe anything in the low twos could be worth it. But again, this is something that might still take some time. We're still waiting for FDA approval, right? So if this is something that you don't mind kind of piecing into over the long term, then if you just want to start building the position here, even if it's at $3, and then it drops and you can look to try to add it when you can, you know, yeah, I can understand that, right? I can understand that. Because again, even after the run up, again, we can see that, you know, we're talking now about like 50 million, right? We were looking at it, what was it, like 16, 17 million and change or something, right? So now we brought the market cap up to like 40, 50 million and change. And we were making a lot of comparisons. Again, you know, 40, 50 million, something of this magnitude and how much influence it can have. Shout out to another commenter. I'm sorry I don't have your name on hand, but they mentioned that even a company like ISRG can technically tap in to this market that MBOT is in, right, due to the patents that they're holding. So if MBOT is going to be kind of that lone star in the space, then yeah, we can seriously pump up this valuation from these current levels, and I don't think anyone could really ask too many questions or look at it cockeyed, if you will. But that's why I'm saying, even, you know, we bring something conservatively, 200 million market cap. That's about a 4x. I mean, you know, we're talking about $11 and change. So this is something that could be interesting, and that's why, again, when I wanted to do the update, I wanted to look at it back in middle of December. And I know I was a little early, but I said, I felt it. In my opinion, I was very confident in saying that MBOT could have a very good 2025. And so far, so good. Let's look at stock charts real quick. Shout out to everyone who, you know, gave a view on that MBOT video. Because again, you know, it might not always be something that you're interested, or if we look at the stock together, you might not like it, you know, and believe me, that's understandable. But the reason why I kind of like thinking outside of the box too is, you know, it broadens your horizon, you know, and I like to keep it diversified on this channel. I always said that, you know, so I have no problem looking at a lot of these smaller companies. But again, they're all over the place, right? We're looking at something like Origin Materials we can look at real quick. But again, something like an MBOT, you know, just, you got to spread it around. You got to keep your mind open, because there's money to be made everywhere. And I understand everyone's like tech heavy, because I know like tech is taking over. But as I always say, there's money to be made everywhere. And we do need more than tech to run our societies. But yeah, so we ran up here almost similar to a FUBO situation. But obviously FUBO got much different news. But we spiked up here. Look at the RSI up here, almost 94. This is the daily. MACD obviously shot straight up, and this top level resistance 154. I mean, again, technically it is the same company that it was back here for the most part. You understand what I'm saying? So that's why if it was at $1, but now we can pump it up to like 1.5, 160, 170. Well, they issued more shares at 175, so now if it wants to cool down, it technically could come back to 170, 160, and then start to run up again. You understand? So just keep that in mind. But also we did technically gap up, so we could come down and fill that gap, and that's what, yeah, like 2.25, 220. That's why kind of approaching that trend line that we had laid out, right? That's why I'm saying, like in the low twos, like I would understand, it would make sense to me to take a shot. If you see something different in the technicals and you think it's going to continue to run and you think it's going to break out, whatever, 470, right? Like back to this high or something. What is that? Yeah, about 4.5. You know, let us know in the comments section. But we can see also the 200-day moving average, 368. right? So it might flatten out after the big spike up. See how we got like a tighter drop? So we spiked up, and now we might do like this little channel and then spike up to 368. You understand? So that's something to keep in mind as well. RSI technically topping out at 88, continuing to rise though. That's what I mean. They might force it up to just the next line, just like we saw with FUBO. So spike it right up to 645 and then boom, rejected hard. So we can come up to 368 and then we could start dropping back to 268, right? So something to keep in mind. And that's also right near a pivot point. Looks like that's right near a, well, I'm sorry, that's an old pivot point, right? Because these are new for the year. You can barely see them. But this this pivot point here, 330, right? Technically we hit 338 and then started pulling back. And this next pivot point here for the previous year is basically sitting right at the moving average. So that looks like a key level. So that's why I'm saying they might just kind of, it could hang out for a day or two, but then they'll probably spike it right up there and then pull it back. And you can see this pivot point. No, this is last year again. Wow, that's throwing me off. 236. And that's what I mean. Back to there, like 228. Right? And if we come straight down, well, yeah, that would be lower if we come straight down. But you can see over, you know, throughout most of the day, if we just slowly bleed, right? You can see, look, this is Friday morning. Even here, like Wednesday, the 8th, late afternoon, you can see, look, 220, 2.25, 230, 240, right? So bang and bang. So you might see something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I love how I just randomly just babble on about this stuff. But it works. Short flow 3.5%. Yeah, this wasn't a short play. This wasn't a short. Like I said, I just think a lot of people, hey, listen, you know, maybe I got the ball rolling, right? Because I don't know of anyone else that was really talking about MBOT, unless you guys do. You know, technically, if they made videos before me, obviously, you know, shout out to them. Yeah. But you know, we were talking about it down in the $1. We spoke about it a couple of times. It was just very intriguing to me. And again, you go to the website, guy sitting there holding, it could be a girl, I'm sorry. Someone sitting there holding a Sega Game Gear, and they're just guiding this through your cardiovascular system. And what I mean, you know, like we see the writing on the wall. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I always speak like that. That's why I always like to look at it like that. Now, again, like I say, do whatever works for you. If you're a trader and you're able to make yourself, you know, 30, 50% consistently, you know, day in, day out, or, you know, every 2-3 days, you're able to, you know, call a trade right. You make yourself 40, 50%. I mean, you know, if you're consistently hitting base hits like that, then again, more power to you. We're all different. Do whatever works, whatever's most comfortable for you. And if you found a system where you're a short-term trader, you don't like to invest, listen, that's fine. But again, it's just something to keep in mind, right? Something else to have on the watch list. Something to potentially be a part of over the long term. Origin, we were looking at this support trend line here. The stock broke, came down to just, no, what is that? 102? Came down to 102. Got a back above that. Looked like almost an ascending triangle, but then actually rejected, came back down here, 95. And then we bounced, though, technically made a higher high from that previous bounce back, even though we made a higher low. So we're beginning to trumpet here, it looks like. If we go from this high, 126, bang. And now we come down here, right? This low was 98.25. That's close enough. Bang, right? So we have this trumpeting now. So what that means to me is that's going to be potentially more increased volatility, right? So now you're going to have to see what the stock wants to do, because technically this looks like a slight upward channel, and we can drop and retest this and then drop and break back down to this 95, or potentially make newer lows in this range down at about 92.5 cents, it looks like, right? Touching that fib of about 93. But also, this did look like a key support level. And again, you can see we rejected, we got back above it. We came back down, boom, retested, spiked right above it, and then came back, rejected again. So it might want to come back up and try to retest it again. So you could see, again, a rise of about 140. Also, look, yeah, before this recent drop out of the support range, I was kind of speculating a potential ascending triangle. It looked like that it was setting up in the longer term. But remember, sometimes we go early and you never know what can happen, who can start, selling their positions, who comes out and craps all over the stock, right? So sometimes you break out of these support levels and it doesn't always go exactly according to plan, but if we draw out that new trend line, again, you can say that readjusted, we are still potentially in a long-term ascending triangle, right? And even if you drop down and break, let's just say back down to this 106, it can bounce and gain momentum going into these earnings. And then if these earnings come out and beat, it can still spike back up. Or even if it goes sideways here right now, 1.25, and then boom, spike up if they beat earnings. You can see, look, this top of this range, if this is an ascending triangle, right? I know I'm speaking hypothetically, but bear with me. If this is the top of the range, you can see we're looking at about, like 190. So even here from 120, 130, we're still talking about well over like a 50% move. And if we do happen to drop down and retest here in the low ones, you're talking about almost a 100% move back to the top of the range. But I know people are expecting a little bit of a breakout. The last couple of earnings, I mean, it's been very close. And that's why, again, I said something like Origin is kind of delicate. It was in that same situation as something like a SoundHound, something like a FUBO before we got the news, right? It was cheap, and some people are looking at it kind of mixed. So, like, they got to come either very close or consistently beat to kind of hold the value they're at. And that's why, even here, as soon as it dipped below as soon as it dipped below $1, it bounced right back, right? And that's why they can't really destroy it, because we were looking at the numbers. And again, did they miss, like on the revenue side? Technically, yes. Did they kind of come close? Yes. Next quarter, estimates jump up above 8.3. They bring in 8.2, right? So yes, technically they missed again, but they made even more money quarter over quarter, right? Slowly growing and just missed the mark. So now going up to slightly above 9, hopefully they can pull a beat out. And that's why I'm saying, even if it slightly goes down or kind of remains sideways here, 116, 122, if they do come out with a nice earnings and boom, beat that. If you see, even back up here, 150, that'd be a good return. But again, if you want to really bring it up to the top range, you can see 170 to potentially 190 and change. So you can see a big percentage move here if the company delivers. And again, you want them, if they do happen to miss, it has to be very, very close. But the problem is, again, the burn here and the losses. So on 8.2, still reported a loss of 22 cents. Back here on 7, it was 12. Back here on 6.8, it was a loss of 11. Okay, so if they don't incur those same increased losses that they saw last quarter, then going up to 9, yeah, they should technically report a loss of like 10 cents and change, 10 cents. They really should, based on previous trends, excluding, the big wide loss last quarter. Even before that, right? It wasn't too bad. But I don't know. Only time will tell. I know they were pumped about the Origin 2. Moving to single. Okay. Tax obligations. These were last earnings, right? Reaffirms guidance. Yep, revenue is up. Company maintained full year revenue guidance of 25 to 35 million, when analysts expect 31. All right. But again, see, again, you can't really break it out too much either, because you need the revenue to come in. And that's why I'm saying, in my opinion, again, I know I'm predicting, which is dangerous, but like this long term, let's say they beat and then they come up and then we cool down, we go into next earnings and they miss slightly. We bring it back down to 130 and then we rise it up, right? And then they beat, but they beat big, right? That'll be the catalyst with the long-term chart pattern setting up. That'll be the catalyst that'll potentially bring us to the apex of this potential ascending triangle. And then that'll be the reason why we can come up and test these previous trend lines and then get back above and get us back to that gap fill of 364 that I know a lot of people are waiting for. So we have to wait and see. I don't know. Am I missing news? I don't see. And didn't we look at it last quarter with earnings? I think we did. So, all right, so we now just have a CEO, not a co-CEO. Okay. I'll stay there until 2025. Okay. That's what I mean. A situation like this, it's all about earnings and how much the losses are. And again, even last quarter, you see that where was the stock? Stock was like 120, 125, we'll call it. And you can see, yeah, it was a bad quarter and we brought it down to sub-dollar, but then we immediately bounced it back because, as I said, it wasn't as bad as it seemed, even though technically this loss was huge. But it looks like investors are trying to keep this stock above the $1 mark, right? And maintain that compliance and get rid of that scare. So this is why, again, they need to beat one of these, in my opinion. So they need to come in with like 9.5 million, because even if they are going to post another wider loss, because again, more profitabilities later on the horizon, I'm looking at it to where if they beat that, but they post whatever minus 15 cents, then even if they drop, it'll keep them inside the pattern. You understand? And so that's like, I know I'm weird, but that's something like I would be personally looking at. But of course, we know earnings are relevant for basically every company. So you always got to keep an eye on earnings. Again, I say that even if you're buying and holding, oh, I'll check back in 3 years. Yeah, that's fine. But every couple of months, you should quickly at least update yourself with the earnings and how the company's doing. So Origin here, we can see on the daily RSI 56, we came back down. Looks like we're bouncing off that pivot point there, 120 a couple of times. That's also the 50-day moving average. So again, we've kind of been hanging out, but technically we're above these points, which is a good sign. Looked like, again, it broke and then immediately got back above that 200-day moving average. So this is why it looks like we're kind of stepping upwards like that, which is why maybe the next stop might be around that 140 level we looked at. MACD just crossed to the upside, so that's why I don't think it'll crater, but it could flatten out and just hold that moving average, hold that pivot point, you understand? In my opinion. Switching over here, we can see for the new year, we have 120 as a pivot point. Stock right now, 123, technically still above that mark. RSI directly middle of the road at 50, and we can see we came down, but we had some nice bounces off of our 50-day moving average down at $1.04. Does look like the MACD is actually starting to flatten and may potentially begin to curl. So over the next couple of weeks, you might have a cross. When are the earnings? Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, it can hang out here, and then, look where I'm looking at here at the bottom, January 22nd or something. It can, like, come down here, and then the MACD could cross on the weekly, and that could spike us back up, and then earnings come out, and boom, that spikes us back up, right? So, definitely something to keep an eye on. Next pivot point, on the weekly, 195. And again, what was the top here of this range? Right now, about 191, 192 on the way up. Kind of good. We're getting good. And, right, let's look at this. Back above moving average. Short float, 4.7%. Again, not too crazy, right? Not too crazy. We were wedging. We just popped out of the wedge. Looking like right here looks like kind of, well, again, you didn't, well, yeah, from earnings, big drop, but you can say that. You can see that. 190 coming down. Boom, coming down into the bank, popped out. And again, this was a company where the pop out take place basically right at the end of the year going into the new year. Off of technically no news, right? So this may be another stock where you're seeing the January effect. You're seeing some people kind of start to take positions now in this, expecting over the next couple of quarters, boom, boom, boom. And then eventually, gap filling back to 360 and change. But yeah, I don't see anything else. Yep. I know we've been talking for a while, but I'll look at one more. I know people were asking about AMPX. So yeah, this is a company, they recently got a deal. Obviously we missed the boat and it went from 60 to $4. So I hate to play Johnny come lately on these situations because anytime this happens, like could it bounce and get to this trend line at $5? Yeah, of course. And definitely feasible. So to all you out there who jumped in down here at 2-3, you could very well see $5 in the short term. So congratulations to you. But of course, then it could reject and come back down and sell off back to the twos going into next earnings. And it actually might be justified because in the numbers, it doesn't look too crazy, but it could kind of be viewed as overvalued. They did technically just get about a $20 million order, I believe, across two separate companies. They make batteries, and they went to like lightweight aero vehicles, if you will. But AMPX, Amprius Technologies, here on the New York, stock closed about 3.5, down a third of a point, 7.8%, market cap about 400 million. We're operating at a loss, beating these loss estimates for 3 of the last 4 quarters. Revenue bouncing around, did recently start to climb. These losses are pretty massive though. But we can see over the last couple of quarters, we really started to come in above expectations. The losses remained in line, but we can see 2.7 million estimate. They bring in almost 4 million, and then estimates drop down to about 1.8 million. They bring in 2.3, and then about 2.5 million. They bring in over 3.33 million. And now for last quarter, estimates were up to 4.89 million. The company brings in 7.86 million. Now they said though, I know we're pumped about these orders, and we technically just broke out of this downward channel that the stock was in essentially since inception. You can see going from the high there, coming back down to that previous high, you can see just that perfect kind of parallel downward channel, and then we started to break up and out. But it was kind of justified because they turned it around. They started beating earnings. And again, when you beat by 50, 40, 50, 60% beating an estimate, that is definitely something that catches a lot of people's attention. And you have also the company reporting a more narrow than expected loss on the EPS side as well. So nice double play there for AMPX. And very good quarter. So the volume coming in justified, especially as it started to tease the breakout of this channel and then pull back. If a lot of traders saw that in the technicals, saw the consolidation area here around the fib, they probably knew to pile in there at around 160, 180 and catch the explosion out. So shout out to all you tech traders out there. You know who you are. But again, you can see in the technicals, this is going across these bottoms here before we had the break. You can see that's from October 24th, 2023 to that bottom there, November 10th, 2023, cutting across, and you can see how it perfectly meets up with that high on March 21st, 2024. So just bringing that across, in my opinion, you can see very low 5. So that could very well happen maybe inside the next couple of days, because I know it did just gain a lot of attention and did technically just break out about 100% after already running from bottoms. So that's why it could cool down for maybe a couple of days. But if it does then bounce up to 5, I wouldn't be shocked because that's what the technicals are showing me. And now you draw a quick trend line from your bottoms here. Excuse me. 61.32. I know you can type out the exacts, but I don't know, I'm lazy. And you can see, yeah, see, technically this was our support. And you can see it had that flash break. Yeah, that was actually a perfect play in the technicals. Anyone who was watching it saw this and then stepped in. Those are the ones I want to give a shout out to. That was well played. The coming up, the retesting of the support, but understanding the hype behind it, and then having the big volume come in the next day, forcing the big candle to push it well above that support trend. Very well played. Very well played to those traders. But yeah, technically that looks like our support trend line. I mean, obviously, if you want, you could draw another trend line there. But yeah, you can see that's why it could even if it slowly and quiets down, you can see, yeah, it could get back to the low 3s, but then it could also bounce and get back to 5. But we'll look at the news. I'll look at the fundamentals real quick. Again, I know this is probably like a 40, 50 minute video, but deal with it. And we can see the debt recently popped up about 8 million up to about 36 million. Our cash on hand is technically outweighing that, though. Company's sitting here with about 46.5 million cash on hand. Our free cash flow technically did dip down year over year. This time last year was minus 7.3 million. Now it's about minus 9.5 million. So unfortunately, it might get rough before it gets better, which is why the pullback to the low threes is very feasible. But whether it happens over the next 2-3 days, or if it happens over the next even longer than 2-3 months, but in general, 2-3 days or the next 2-3 months, I can understand if you're sitting here like, no, I think this is a $5 stock. I think it could hit this, key level of around $6. If you're sitting there saying that, I understand. I really can't fight you too much because this company, again, technically is bringing in revenue and has been beating earnings. We can see assets up here above 100 million. Liabilities have been climbing up, but not at the same proportion, right? And we can see the dip down to sub 60 million equity. Now we bounce back up to above 65 million. So we have to see. Now you want to see next quarter, they have to get above that, in my opinion. 666, unfortunately 667, or even 67. If you can get back above to the 70 plus million mark, that would be huge. But I mean, the net debt reversed back down about 7 million. The total debt didn't move too much. So that's why the overall value, if you're wondering why the book value went down, even though the equity went up, the net debt also kind of wiped out that. That's what, like minus 7 million on a move of about 5 million. So, yeah, all of these other numbers are net gross margin was minus 500. Came up to minus 98. I mean, technically, it's not as bad as it was. Operating margin is still pretty big. Was worse. So, yeah, it's going to take some time. But I know they did just get the order. And they mentioned the new factory enabling them to scale up in California, I believe. Okay. Yeah, we have some beefy price targets. Price target maintained $10 a share. H.C. Wainwright, that came out after last quarter's earnings, early November. Q3 loss. Total revenue. Yep, nice. Higher sales of batteries. Gross loss 5.1 million. Increase of almost $1 million or 20% due to higher cost of revenue. 11.3 million loss from operations, increase of 2 million, higher operating expenses. So again, this is what we always say, in the beginning it's rough for these companies, and as they scale up and they're able to produce more efficiently, we start to get these costs in check, and hopefully as new deals and new orders come in and demand stays up, the revenue eventually starts outweighing the cost, and then boom, we're off to the races. So the fact that they're even building these facilities and saying that they have, they're seeing increased demand and they're trying to now supply it, I mean, that technically is a good sign. So revenue really should, from this point, should continue to increase over the next several quarters. Net loss 10.9 million. So revenue from sale of batteries, sales of Sycor batteries. Yeah, they use silicone in the batteries, and supposedly it's like much more efficient. Shipped over 400,000 batteries, but this is since inception. But I guess still good sign. Validated for application over 175 customers, including all of these people. Company expanded manufacturer, Fremont, California, from a kilowatt hour scale manufacturing line to a megawatt hour scale manufacturing line. Expected to be fully operational by early 2025. Okay, so I'm assuming like maybe over the next month or so. Increasing production capacity to up to 2 megawatt hours. The company is also planning the construction of a new gigawatt hour scale manufacturing facility in Brighton, Colorado. See, this is what I mean. They're just scaling. So again, technically in the numbers, you could make the argument in the moment it's overvalued. Over the long term, though, again, if they want to cool it off, like back to the twos and kind of bring it back down to that quote-unquote fair value, back down to earth, I can see it. But then at the same time, if you told me you like it at 2, you think it's worth a shot, I can't call you crazy either, right? Because this sounds great. And of course, these factories, these manufacturing facilities are here in America, which is a good sign. But they did mention, I think it was this article maybe that mentioned the issue of potential trade wars overseas with China, with the suppliers. So again, I'm not diving too deep into the channels of the business. But again, if you have that information, let us know in the comments section as well, if that could be an issue. But company expects, look at this, the future outlook, right? This is coming out of the 10Q. Company expects to incur additional losses as it scales its business and increases operating expenditures, including research and development. They're telling you straight up, we will incur additional losses over the next couple of quarters as we scale up this business to try to meet this demand and make you, the shareholder, happy, including R&D, which is also good in a way, because if they already have demand and we have other IP in the pipeline, then this could be a very good sign. But again, see, that's the thing. In my opinion, you find a situation like this, and hopefully we turn around 3 years from now and it worked out great for everybody, right? Of course. I wish everyone the best. But hypothetically, hopefully, this becomes one of those players. And what you do is you find a company and you wait for it to become attractive in value, right? Now, that dropped down to 60 cents wherever it went. Might have been a little extreme, which is probably why it bounced and got right back to $1 and change, $2. But something like this, again, you throw it on your watch list now, or you begin to take a position now that you see the breakout. If you don't want to miss out on it, I understand. But again, if they happen to trickle down a little bit, if they for some reason do another offering down the road, stock drops down to $2, again, you're kind of buying near that quote-unquote fair value. And it should, in theory, benefit you even more, because if the company actually delivers and does what they say, you are going to see extreme compounded growth, because you're only getting in at a couple of dollars. And if we reach a point where the stock is moving a couple of dollars a day, $7, $10, $12 a day, that's where wealth comes from. So that's why, you're hyped about it at this price point. I understand. But again, technically at the market capitalization valuation of the business, it could technically come down and go lower. But where the hell was I? See, I got excited. 400,000 batteries. We looked at this. What's going on? You're right. Incur additional losses. Wow. Plans to raise additional funds to meet future operating and capital expenditure requirements. They're telling you straight up what's going to happen. Now, of course, they don't always stick exactly to the plan, and some things don't happen, or some things happen before you thought they would, right? So, anything can happen, but they're basically laying out exactly what's going to take place over the next couple of quarters. Company continues to invest in development of battery technology. Okay, very good. Improving battery life, energy density, developing larger cell form factors to meet the specific demand. Okay. Company faces challenges, supply relationships for necessary materials, components, and equipment to mass produce its silicon technology. It also needs to develop an automated high-volume manufacturing line. Right. Sounds like they're doing that. Highly competitive market. Yes, apparently I've never seen so many battery companies, but apparently we have them. Believes it is the leading company using a 100% silicon anode that is free of any inactive additives and aims to maintain its competitive edge through continuous innovation. Yep, FDA. Yeah, COVID. Company's expanding its factory in Fremont, California. I believe it's kilowatt to megawatt. Correct me if I'm wrong. Expected to be fully operational by early 25. Planning construction. Colorado. Estimated CapEx ranging between 75 and 100 million to achieve up to 500 megawatt per year of manufacturing capacity. It seems like it would cost more than that. But okay, cool. Entered into a supply agreement with Brazilians. Proprietary silicon anode materials in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Beautiful. And has established so many important to support the production of SiCore batteries. Issuance of common stock. Net proceeds 11.2 million. Also offered a cash tender for public prime warrants. 13. Okay, we're raising money here. But again, at least they're scaling up. Cashless 15, okay. No outstanding debt, okay. Maintains a strong cash position, 35 million as of September. Yeah, this is okay. This is okay. Yeah, I don't know. So like I said, sometimes I forget what I'm reading. Yeah, see, of course this goes over literally every single risk that a company could run into. But there was reliance on suppliers in foreign countries, including China, subjects the company to risks and uncertainties relating to foreign laws and regulations and changes in relations between the United States and such foreign countries. So we're going to have to double check that. But I like the fact that these facilities are in, what they say, California and coming in Colorado. So that's a good sign. And again, about 400 million market cap. I'm just saying, in my opinion, it could be overvalued in the numbers, which again is what that's just a slight red flag I try to raise. If markets seriously pull back, something like this that just had a run up could absolutely have a drop back down. But, down here is showing debt. I mean, they're saying they have no outstanding debt, which is fine. But here, 10 million difference, we'll call it. We'll be conservative, and we can say that, again, assets outweighing liabilities in the short and long term. Equity 65 million plus the cash overlay is plus 75 million. And last couple of quarters, we're going to bring in, why isn't this showing last quarter? They brought in 7 million, they said. But this isn't, obviously the losses are going to outweigh the revenue here. So again, technically we could say like minus 20 million, but it really should be more than that. So that's why, again, the quote unquote fair value of this business, even if we wipe out the debt, right? Let's just say I'm wrong. I don't know what I'm looking at. They got 46 million on hand. Don't worry about that debt plus this equity. That's about 100 million in change. Market cap right now is almost about, 4x that number. So that's why, could it get up to 5 with what's coming? In my opinion, yes. Could it drop back down and retest these support trend lines in the mid 2s and potentially the low 2s? In my opinion, yes. Would I be a buyer here at about 3.5? I mean, with the rate at which these stocks are exploding once they get trending, again, I can understand piecing my way in. If you are going to be a one-time buyer and it is what it is and you will never have another dollar down the road to buy more shares if it drops down, is this the quote-unquote ideally perfect price? Then technically the answer is no, right? Because, yeah, it could spike up to 5, but then if it comes back down to 240, right, you technically just saved yourself about 30%. So, again, it depends on your situation, depends what you're looking for. But it looks like there's some long-term growth coming, so I don't know how many people wouldn't be able to add over time. Hopefully you would be able to add over time. But revenue growing nicely. We can see, what is this? 8 of the last 9 quarters. No, that's not showing us. 7 of the last 8 quarters beat. And we can see revenue expected to climb here. 7 million, 8.7 million, over 10 million, almost 14 million. And we can see for 2025, we're expecting our yearly revenue to jump from around 20 million to over 60 million, which is very, very nice growth year over year. And then you're looking for an even bigger multiple going into 26, estimating right now to do over 230 million. And I think if the demand is there, and that's why they're scaling up into these facilities to meet this demand, I do believe I would give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they can probably hit these marks. But the problem is the losses right now that they're incurring. So what are they expecting actually? See, look, even in 26, revenue jumping up above 200 million, they're still expecting to post a loss for the year of 17 cents. But then expecting to cut those losses in half while almost maintaining that revenue potentially going into 2027. So obviously this is several years down the road, and something like this you have to take it quarter by quarter to see, are they on time to hit this mark? Are all the financials meeting up as we go in terms of revenue, in terms of losses that we're incurring, right? And of course we could always do a potential restructuring to limit losses, and then it could be worth even more money. So anything can happen down the road, but right now those are a couple of things that I would keep an eye on over the long term. AMPX. Yeah, trend line a little over 5. Next pivot point on the weekly. This is the weekly at about 5.5. We did just get back above the 50-day moving average. Very nice. MACD rising nicely. Okay, RSI technically topping out at over 73. So we'll see if it wants to start cooling down. Even here, we can see the RSI was over 70, right? Broke up, but got above that pivot point of about 350 and change. So continued off the hype and then rejected hard and basically came right back down to that pivot point. And you can see the RSI 71.5. So, of course, now it could either go either way. And you can see a bounce back up to, 420, 430. Or you can see it break and cool off, come back down to the low 3s. RSI comes back into the 60s. And then maybe the next day, it'll bounce and try to come back up and try to retest that 4 level and try to climb to this pivot point, So a couple of things that can happen, but 50-day moving average started to curl off those lows with the stock, and now it's sitting at 204, which is why I said, again, even if it goes from 3.5 back down to 2, maybe that could be viewed as realistic in the numbers, but it's something that could happen, and that's why. If you're going to get in, if you like it for the long term, of course, try to see if you can add if it does have those big dips, but that was just a quick broad overview. They kept mentioning it in the Discord. So again, I know this is a long video. I technically only wanted to update like 1 or 2 names, but I figured, let's look at Origin. And then someone asked about AMPX. So I figured, all right, we'll look at that. Short float 4.8%, right? So again, we definitely had some coverage taking place for the shorts. And I mean, this is a big run up here from early September. But technically the company is releasing good news. And now if everyone's buying in and everyone's pumped because this facility is going to come online and they're going to start pumping out more product and revenue is going to start chunking in, then I can understand the hype behind it. So AMPX, I would say throw it on your watch list if you don't want to jump in now and think it could come back. But very, very interesting story that could be developing over the next 12 to 24 months. But that's pretty much it. I'll end it there for stock review. I wanted to be quick. Again, it is what it is, but as I always said, if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. If I don't have something to say, I'm not going to just record a video, waste your time. So I felt I had a couple of things to say today. I'll end it there. So Stocks by the Numbers, thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But of course, more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.